We teach gaming concepts in all of our high schools. If I put that gaming concepts class early on, I know that those kids are going to A, pay attention, be attentive at school, be more engaged. These kids are not only building the teamwork and all the aspects we want them to, they're building situational awareness to understand, okay, I'm in this situation, I've not done this before. How am I going to strategize to do that? When you look at kids today and you look at these environments, a lot of these kids we're reaching that we've never had before. There's a lot of desire to be in that class.
Let's get this thing started. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so excited for you guys to all be here with us. We are going to be talking about collegiate scholarships, collegiate esports opportunities, and a lot of things that deal with higher ed and esports and that pathway today. With us today is an awesome panel of speakers, professionals, and all around experts in the field of collegiate esports and how you get there. We've got and here we go with the names that I'm going to definitely butcher, but Danielle Sirekis, who I am dropping in right now. She's the Director of Esports for Florida Tech. Kaitlin Teniente, there we go, is the Director of Esports for St. Mary's University. Travis Yang, the Director of Esports and Competition. And then Raequan Benford, Overwatch athlete, and he's at Wichita State University. My name's
Travis is at Syracuse University.
That was on my list.
We got to do a shout out. We have to do shout outs.
Syracuse University. My name's Alex Herby, and I'm the Education Integrations Manager for Generation Esports. With me today is also Dr. Christy Custer, co-author of the award-winning Gaming Concepts curriculum and wonderful co-host with me today. And then also lurking in the shadows down there is Dr. Michael Russell, also co-host of the same award-winning curriculum. He will be, like I said, lurking back there, answering all of your dying questions and all of that, responding to comments with me. Just for some housekeeping for the panel today, everybody, if you're watching today, please go ahead and if you have any questions, throw those in chat for us. That way everybody can have a chance to respond and see those, and we will be answering those as best as we can and feeding those up to the panelists. Panelists, feel free. You can respond if you'd like through text, or you can also respond verbally if you'd like. So, all right. So everybody's here. We're really excited to get going here. So we're going to just kind of go around the table here and ask for a brief introduction. And if we can start with Kaitlin.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it. My name is Kaitlin Teniente, and I currently serve as the Director of Esports and Head Esports Coach over at St. Mary's University here in San Antonio, Texas.
All right. Thank you. And Danielle.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I am the Director of Esports at Florida Tech. I was formerly the head coach of esports at Lawrence Technological University. It's Michigan. Now I'm in Florida. I also am a board of directors member with our friend Travis, and also one of 4 ladies who started Esports and Coffee.
Also award-winning Esports and Coffee.
Yeah, I don't want to flex on that.
I'll do it for you. Hey, I'll shout it out.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Travis.
My name is Travis. I'm the Director of Esports Competition here at Syracuse. Prior to this, I've been in a couple institutions, most recently Wichita State for 2 years. And I also serve on the Board of Directors for NACE along with Danielle.
Wonderful. And then finally, Raequan.
My name is Raequan Benford. I'm currently an Overwatch player and coach at Wichita State University. I used to also do the graphic design work for Wichita State a few years ago.
Good. Awesome.
Well, so we're going to just jump right in. And so I have a list of questions, but we're always willing and want to take audience questions. We can go any direction you want. We get a lot of questions about coaching and about the pathway from high school, well, even middle school to high school to college. And so we're super excited that you guys are here. So we'll just jump right in. And this is probably the most, besides scholarships, which we'll get to, the most requested question that I get is, how do you approach recruiting players for your team? And then on top of that, what qualities are you looking for in potential recruits? Kaitlin, if you wouldn't mind, we'll start with you.
Sure. So, this is a great question. In terms of approaching recruiting players, it's definitely casting a wide net, but also being flexible in what our idea of a recruit looks like. But more than that, it's what are the qualities that we look for? And number one is going to be availability. And qualities that we look for. Oh, is there an echo?
A little bit of an echo.
The qualities that we look for. Oh, I don't know why it's echoing on me.
Uh-oh.
Alex, I think it's you, buddy.
Okay.
Try
Third
that.
time's a charm. Number one, availability. Are you showing up on time? Early and on time? Because if you don't show up, doesn't matter if you're the best player in the world, nothing I can do for you. Number two, attitude. Are you approaching things with a good, positive attitude, or as positive as things can be given the context and the circumstance? Number three, resiliency. How do you bounce back from tough situations in game and out of game? Are you someone who can put things aside when they need to be? And number four, feedback. Are you somebody who is willing to receive, but also give feedback? And not just to your peers, but also to your coaches. That is a quality that is really important to me. And the folks that can approach me with feedback, I deem as bar raisers, because the feedback that they bring me is almost always going to raise the bar for other athletes. And then number five is game skill, having knowledge of the game and skill in the game. But those four things come first for me when it comes to what I'm looking for in athletes.
And you guys, just for time's sake, I have I sent you guys a list and have a list. So I want to get through as many questions as possible. But if any of you want to jump in, feel free. Like if there's anything that you want to say, feel free. Danielle, we'll move to you. Can you describe, once the students get on the team, can you describe a typical training regimen for your team? Like how often do you practice and what does a practice session usually entail?
Yeah, so I think that's going to look different per game or per program per game. So like some programs are extremely competitive and are competing across multiple conferences. I have game coaches across all those titles, so I let them lead and kind of schedule what they're going to plan to, how they're going to run practice. I try to give my coaches agency upon their teams. But I push, like my former program, I push to focus on practicing 3 times a week. It doesn't feel like a lot, but sometimes I have to give them off time. It's a tech school. Both of them were tech schools, STEM schools. Education is really our first and foremost thing that we focus on. So scheduling and kind of like picking a balance between competition and academics is hard, but usually it's 2 to 3 hour sessions. I push the coaches, to make sure they're doing a VOD, make sure they're having a conversation and a dialogue versus just playing randomly. Because I think if a student or anyone can explain what they're doing, they tend to understand it better. I don't have a specific answer because I'm trying to give my coaches agency. I kind of give them, we're moving to next year and they don't know this, so hopefully they're not watching, lesson plans, not so much like a teacher, but like, tell me what you plan on working on. that way you kind of have focus, because I'm almost teaching the coaches how to coach, and then the coaches are teaching the students how to be on a team.
And with the 3 days a week, I have to, Danielle, I was a little surprised by that because, of course, I'm thinking of traditional sports. Just Kaitlin, Raequan, Travis, or is that right? Is that correct? Not
Yeah.
correct. That's a terrible
So,
term for it.
at least-
Do you guys find that?
So for like Overwatch, we have matches most of the day, so we can't even practice most days because most of our days it's either matches or practice. And so whenever, like last year, we had 3 leagues going on at the same time, so we were only able to practice 3 days a week or 2 days a week, and then every other day is match days, and then people have to do things on weekends and other life responsibilities in like school.
Okay.
I should probably add, I don't let my teams compete in more than 2 conferences a time. Because my whole reason of being, their whole reason, not mine, their whole reason of being here is to graduate, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm not giving them time to study, then we're a different caliber team. I'm not trying to be the most competitive. I'm not trying to be clerky, even though I would love to. I can call them out because we're friends, but I think that's the huge difference. We don't have a highly competitive students, and we're kind of making the jump between casual to competitive. So would I love to be able for them to schedule that much? But they probably are practicing 6 or 7 times a week. It's just scheduled practice, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Travis, as the director of esports for your institution, what is that role like? What does it look like? Because we kind of know how it might work at lower levels, being from like a high school or maybe a club team or something like that. But when you get to something where you're almost pro, I'm going to call, collegiate space is almost basically semi-pro. And, what does it look like for your role? And do you coach being the director?
Yeah, Alex, I think that's a great question. It touches on kind of the growth we've seen in collegiate, but also what's still needed and some issues that still exist in the space in terms of, right, what is the perception from an athletic director or an upper administrator of a coach versus a director when it comes to the esports space? Sometimes there's still confusion in that area. And I think for the people in this panel, many of us, if not all of us, have experienced that being in a situation where we're classified as a coach or referred to as a coach, but in reality, doing the work of a director. And obviously there's things on the back end that are attached with those titles, right? And pay and resources that you get and things like that. So, right, I think building off of Danielle's response, right, a coach, the way we have it in collegiate esports is most likely going to be someone who is coaching a specific game, right? Similar to a basketball coach or a football coach, right? They're not usually coaching multiple games. They have something that they're specifically working on, and those could be student coaches, those could be coaches that you hire on stipend, contract coaches, in person, whatnot. Whereas a director, if you think about it structurally, is maybe more akin to like an athletic director. They are in charge of overseeing multiple sports, instituting high-level policies across the program, making sure that the program is aligning with the institution's overall goals, handling the partnerships, and again, just more of the administrative side. Now, in reality, I think a lot of directors kind of sit often in a medium in between those two, because even for me, I'm technically a director of competition. I competed and I played, and there are some games where, like Valorant or Counter-Strike, I do like to go and I can be a little bit more hands-on with those games. Maybe not quite at a coaching level, because obviously those students are really good, like you said, competing at a tier 2, tier 3 level in some cases, but enough to be able to contribute somehow meaningfully. So there's a balance, and I think most directors are pretty well intentioned when it comes to making sure that they're not trying to coach multiple games. Usually they just don't even have the time or the bandwidth, but I think a lot of directors are cognizant of like, hey, this is a game that I do have expertise in and I can contribute to, and maybe a game like Overwatch, right, or like Rocket League, I would never dare to go and try and tell a student what they did right or wrong. So a lot of different facets there, but I think the scene is getting a lot better in terms of just overall education for all the different levels.
Yeah, and so when you're talking about you, the director, by definition is more of an administrative role. When things like game updates or rule changes come out through the league that you're playing with, where does that funnel to? Do things like that go to you, or would things like that go to the coach? And who's responsible to disseminate those types of updates down to your players if there's a mechanics change or a rule change for gameplay?
Yeah, I'd say real quickly, depends on kind of what the update is. If it's like an overall league policy, something that has large implications, I think on us as directors, that's our job to stay up to date with that. And usually that's shared through Discords or press releases or newsletters through the major leagues and conferences. But if it's like Valorant, where a new character comes out or a new map comes out, and it's going to be not able to be played on for the next 2 weeks, that's usually going to be the team manager or the coach who is seeing those updates and relaying that to the players, as they prep for their day-to-day matches and practices.
Great. And I've got one question from the audience here. I believe they want to ask you, but I think it could go to the entire group. But how do you fund playing in multiple leagues? Is it something that you guys have allocated resources from the university, or is it some sort of separate budget item that you are fundraising for? How does funding for that work?
Yeah, I'll leave it up to Kaitlin or Danielle. I think either of them could.
For both programs, because obviously I've been at two now, we have an allocated budget. And I think universities now, because we're kind of at this pretty much majority that I know are at this enrollment cliff spot. So everybody's looking to like pause budgets or cut budgets. So for me, I'm currently looking for sponsors, but local sponsors, not like, hey, I want Red Bull to sponsor us. Ironic because Red Bull sponsors our campus, but Red Bull to sponsor us. I'm looking for local schools, not schools, businesses, companies that would help that. I think it's really cool. Something that I'm going to give a shout out to Full Sail and Sari. Orlando Health funds some of their students' scholarships. So that's really cool because then it's a different type of program, but it's really cool that businesses can fund it that way. And then it is the university kind of indirectly still making money, and the money is coming from an outside source. So that kind of helps budgets. And you have to be careful. You have to assess what leagues you want to be aligned with, what leagues you want to be partnered with, what offers the best type of competition for your program. Not every conference is going to be a good choice for your program. Yeah.
Great. So talking, we talked about the role of the director, but let's talk about, Raequan, I'm curious about how your day goes as a player, because as somebody who played a lot of video games in college, not professionally, but also, played a lot, I can't imagine playing something as a sport and also trying to pass classes. So talk us through some of your day and what it's like for you.
So for the most part, my day starts. Most of my classes now are online, at least for this semester, which has been very convenient because I work from home. So when I wake up, I do my work. I have two classes that one's a lecture and the other one I just have to be like in a call for. And so I finish those, and after that I go to work. And then once I get off of work, the next couple of hours that I have a free time before practice, which is from 7 to 9, I spend doing working on school. And then the moment that I'm finished with that, and if I have any time to spare, I do VOD reviewing with the team. I do a lot of one-on-ones. It's just to do individual coaching to help the players themselves get better. And then we go into actual practice from 7 to 9. And then after that, if I'm already done with my homework, I practice the game I play myself. And if I don't have time, I just go back to doing schoolwork and I just rinse and repeat the day after. And then when weekends come along, I usually schedule time to hang out with my social life, hang out with friends and such later in the day. But I spend the morning to maybe 6 p.m. just playing whatever game it is that I'm practicing or going over and VOD reviewing the matches. So next time I do see my team, I can talk to them about things that need to be spoken about.
Awesome. And is that a schedule that you've always kept, or how was it when you transitioned into playing at the collegiate level your first year?
So this is a schedule that I've kept since about early high school because I used to play Call of Duty. I played Gears of War competitively before I went to Overwatch. And during like that late middle school era, my grades were slipping, and I was like, okay. And so it kind of came down to it was that the game is going to be there regardless. So first and foremost, education comes first. The game will come second. And so that's why I also like this. The few minutes, like the time that I do spend playing games, I always make sure that I'm focusing on something or something that I'm actively working towards. Because if I just get on and play with no goal in mind, I'm not going to get any better. So that's how I stay relatively good and getting better over time, while also being able to allocate my time where it needs to be.
Yeah. So you'd say purposeful play is what your success mechanism has been.
Yes.
Awesome. Great. Kaitlin, so let's talk about, going back to coaching. How do you collaborate with other coaches and staff members to support the overall success of your program?
Yeah, I think it comes down to communication and trust are going to be the bedrock of collaboration for us. I'm not the only coach. I have 4 assistant coaches who coach our 5 varsity teams. And I think for us to be really effective collaborators, building a work environment where everyone feels comfortable, sharing feedback, sharing concerns, sharing and asking questions is honestly key. On the logistics side of things, though, we live and die by spreadsheets. If it's not in a spreadsheet, it didn't happen. It's not going to happen. No one will be scheduled for it. So those are the 2 key things that keep us organized and keep us on track and makes it easier for us to visualize where we are in the season, how much we have left, how we can allocate resources. Because we aren't just a coaching staff, we also have a pretty robust student staff that supports the program through running our live stream broadcasts, through our social media accounts and the content that we produce, and our on-campus facility supervisors. So all of those pieces have to work together. All of these people have to work together to accomplish something like a game day broadcast with match previews, final scores, updating the history book. Like all of that takes communication from all of us and a lot of planning, and that isn't possible without a good work environment where everyone feels valued, that their work is valued, and where they feel comfortable communicating, especially if things come up, like especially if like something personal comes up and they're like, hey, coach, I can't come in. Can somebody cover my shoutcasting shift? Making sure they feel comfortable to say those things and not, work a bajillion hours without, taking care of academics or themselves or what have you. So communication, trust, and a lot of time spent in Excel.
Well, you touched on this a little bit, Kaitlin. So Danielle, I'm going to pass it on down to you. There's been a lot of focus and a lot of talk about mental health, self-care, in all areas, not just collegiate or high school or, just in all areas. So how do you support the mental health and well-being of your players, especially considering the demanding nature of what esports is, competitive play?
Yeah. Something really unique about Florida Tech, they have behavioral science working directly with all of our coaches and our students. And there's a doctorate or graduate student, either or, working with almost all across all the titles. And so what they do is they're watching how they react to feedback, how they react to losing, if they become tilted. That's our favorite word in esports, right? So that's a little bit of unique spin on something that was going on here prior to me, so I have to credit like Dana and that group of people. My former institution, I always had them meet. I did a camp before the season started, and I had them meet our clinical counseling team and just make sure that they had resources and they knew that this was an option, because a lot of times we play video games or we play games to like de-stress, right? So my fear has always, or is always, that I take away that outlet for them and now we make it an organized quote unquote sport, right? So I always suggest they find a different outlet, whether it be Minecraft or whether it be um, Frisbee. We have some students that love that here. So that's part of the thing that I have adamantly addressed. I'm going to also address here. Taking breaks, noticing that there are signs that they're starting to have a little bit of stressors, and telling them that it's okay. I do not care if we win. 0% care. I care about their experience and more if they feel like they're a part of the team and if they're supported. So, few different outlets.
Well, and you talked about, having the graduate students or the doctoral students in mental health. And then Kaitlin, you also talked about your social media managers. Travis, can you talk to us a little bit about what opportunities exist for collegiate esports athletes, not only within collegiate esports, maybe scholarship type opportunities, but also, jobs beyond collegiate?
Yeah, I think at least on the competitive side, when you're there like student athletes who compete, I think it's really still largely unexplored. Um, Obviously, right, if you look at it from the context of traditional athletics, right, 1%, less than 1%, right, student athletes are making it to a quote unquote professional level. But of course, you're going to school, you're getting a degree, student athlete. That shouldn't, be the end of the world. You're getting so many transferable skills from any sport, esports and traditional sports, that it still makes sense. I think esports is slightly more unique in that majority of students who are going to school doing esports, number one, a lot of them are probably already current students, and it's only now probably one or two generations into like students who are actually being recruited for college. And even then, I feel like my gut says a majority of them are going to school with not with the expectation of going pro, more as this is something to enrich their student experience. So their expectations going in are already a little bit different, and so they're more cognizant of the idea that like, hey, this should be something, if I want to work in the industry, I need to focus on my studies and figure out how I can use my esports experiences and tie that back in with what I'm studying, and see kind of where that takes me or what fields I'm interested in going to. Outside of the competitive side, obviously, I guess I kind of already segued into that, but what we see these days is it used to be right back in 2018, 2019, a vast majority of esports programs were under athletics, and under athletics, there's not really an interest in doing anything outside of competition and recruiting. Whereas these days, it's kind of done a full 180 where every program is like, okay, competition is just the minimum now. What can we be looking at outside of competition to give our students more opportunities, right? In terms of more hands-on experiences, how can we tie this in with what they're studying so that they are getting more applied learning, experiential learning opportunities, so that when they go out in their fields, they're better prepared. And I think it's key to point out that, and this is something I tell my students, it doesn't matter if you're looking to work in the esports industry or not. Probably most students aren't necessarily looking to work, particularly in industry, but your ability to be creative in the work you do through esports is still something that you can transfer, right, and can be demonstrable as an example to potential employers. So even if it's not the exact example that potential employers are looking for, they can still see how you were able to be creative in a kind of a new space and have a unique take on maybe more traditional forms of, say, marketing, for example, or whatnot.
And Raequan, kind of jumping on that, but I'm going to ask you if you can just do the whole gamut, because you're a graphic design major. Is that correct? Yeah. So can you talk to us a little bit about how the recruiting process worked from high school? then to Wichita State, and then projecting into the future, what are your plans? Like Travis said, are you planning on working in esports? Have you gotten a sense of that yet? So kind of just take us through the whole pipeline there.
So I guess going from high school to collegiate, originally I went to WSU Tech. We had started the esports program at Bays High with, I can't remember his name, but he was a robotics teacher. And then he had to go talk to Dr. Botts about having an esports program, and that's how we got started because the other school, Mays Complete, had already had an esports program. And we were like, well, if they have one, why don't we? And so we started competing from there. And then COVID hit my senior year. So spring break happens and we don't go back. And so with all the downtime that I had, I was still trying to figure out if I was going to continue competing. And so when it happens with the Wichita Wolves was around at the time, doesn't exist anymore, for better or for worse. But
the Wichita Wolves were a professional team in Wichita, correct?
Yeah. And they had an Overwatch team, and so I had messaged them seeing if they were having tryouts, and they were, and that's how I ended up meeting Joe, who is now the interim director at Wichita State University. But he had also been the previous interim director while I was at the Wichita Wolves, and so going into that 2021 summer, they were having their first they were having tryouts. And so I had went and I tried out and I made it, which was I was surprised that I did. And how I got started in graphic design was originally I was going to school I went to WSU Tech for digital marketing, and that's what my first degree is in. And then when I was going to WSU, I had a bunch of science credits from high school, and I was like, okay, I might just major in biology because that was originally going to be the plan before COVID hit. And I made the original tryout poster for Wichita State, and that's how I ended up getting started in graphic design and realizing, hey, this is what I want to do. And so that's kind of how I went from high school to collegiate. And then I guess in terms of plans after is now that I've been doing all of this graphic design work for so long and I've built up a pretty good portfolio and now I have 2 degrees, it's now I have to find a job that I can use this in, and I do want to continue working in esports. I think the reason for doing graphic design work in esports compared to other fields, you have a lot more creative freedom. A lot of orgs, you usually have 2-3 designers at most, but you get to make pretty much whatever you want. There is no brand guidelines that you have to strictly follow, except for whatever sponsors you have. So you can just make whatever you want. And to me, that's the most fun part about it, is being able to have the freedom. In terms of competing, Overwatch, not much longer, but I do compete in Tekken, as I play a lot of fighting games, and Tekken at the moment has been one of my main games.
Raequan, were you on the WSU Tech esports team also?
I was not, but we did, because at the same time, COVID was happening, so I had already stopped competing. But I did play in the WSU Tech, as esports room or facility that they had made. Because my senior year, I think it was October-ish, they held a tournament. And so me and my friends, we got to go and we got to play in that, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I was just going to say, because we have a lot of teachers that ask, their classes can't do the webinar, but they ask for me to send this webinar to them. And so I always like to tell them, they'll be surprised that esports teams are at private schools, public schools, 2-year schools.
Yeah.
I mean, they're everywhere. And so I think that's really exciting. So I always encourage students to, no matter where you are scholastically, there's probably a school that fits your need. So
yeah,
I think that's neat.
That's always very important.
All right. So let's talk about how students get in, right? How do they join your program? So I'm going to throw this out to the group, but I'm going to start with Kaitlin. I'm going to direct it towards her. But what is the recruitment process look like, and how do you find these kids to play these games?
Who don't use their real names.
Right. Exactly.
Yes. So one of the jokes I make every year to my incoming freshmen is, hey, give me a little grace, give me a little space. I have to learn a lot of names. I have to learn your government name. your preferred name and your gamer tag.
Yeah.
And, all of those names are going to be used in different contexts. So if I forget one of them, give me a little grace, give me a little space. I will get it memorized by the end of the season. But with that being said, what does that process look like? For every student, it's going to be a little bit different. For some, we recruit them very intentionally. Maybe it's somebody who's on a high school team that has wanted to go to St. Mary's for a long time. They've got goals of business or science or arts and humanities, and they've known St. Mary's is where I want to be, and we think they're a good fit for our program. On the flip side, it might be a student who's like, I really want to go to St. Mary's for esports. And maybe it's not for a specific team. Maybe they want to work in our program. So that recruitment process will look a little bit different. And then truthfully, a lot of our recruits are from just our really wide net. We go to a lot of in-person recruiting events. We try to do as many high school campus visits as possible. We try to coordinate as many high school groups to visit our campus as possible. We I don't want to say weasel our way into like anything and everything on campus, but like I've kind of weaseled my way to anything and everything on campus. So I'm there for orientation. I'm there for fish camp. I'm there for the research symposium. Like I'm trying to get in front of students as much as possible to put the idea of esports in their head, because sometimes students just need a little bit of encouragement. Sometimes they don't see themselves in this environment until somebody encourages them to. And that honestly comes up a lot more with high school girls, and sometimes they just need a little bit of that push of like, hey, yeah, like this is an environment for you. Yes, you can compete on the Valorant team. So recruitment process looks a little bit different for everybody depending on how involved they already are in esports, because not all high schools have esports, although many of them do. Not all of them have an educator who sponsors their esports club, and so sometimes reaching those students who aren't engaged in esports yet can be kind of difficult. So we're willing to go the extra mile to at least get our information out there and spend that extra energy to encourage students to try out, to encourage students to ask questions. But there's definitely in this context, there's no such thing as one size fits all.
Great.
If I could also just,
Yeah.
I just Kaitlin touched briefly right on going to events. I think that was huge in my time at Wichita, particularly when it came to the state athletic associations or esports associations, surrounding Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Texas, Colorado. They all have state esports associations of some sort. And they're so well developed that they're doing state championships now. So you can go to a Super Smash Bros. Ultimate State Championship, watch the matches, have the top 8 and actually go and talk to the students and meet their families, on the spot, which has been really, really cool. Another thing that I remember from Kansas was being able to go up to the Generation Esports or the HSEL. I think it was one of the grand finals up in Kansas City. Similar deal, watching them compete at kind of the highest level. And then again, going to talk with them, going to talk with their coaches. And obviously they're focused on competing there, so you don't get much time. But you at least get to say hi and let them know like, hey, we're over here. Would love to get in touch with you afterwards. So I found that going out there and letting them see like, hey, this is a real person, put a face with the school has helped. So.
And for parents, I know we were the alternative school. We were the alternative high school. In 20 years of me being there, that was the first time we ever had a coach come to our school to recruit, was for esports. And you want to talk about not only students, but parents that had no idea. First of all, that, the thing that my kid's been doing that I've been yelling about could get them a college scholarship. And so there was a lot of pride there. And Travis, I know when you showed up at our HSEL Nationals, it was a huge deal where parents just, they just beamed that their kid was getting recruited by a 4-year collegiate coach. So it's exciting. Danielle, you have something to add here.
I mean, I echo both of my friends, Kaitlin and Travis. The esports center here is a community center on top of a competitive center. So getting in front of students and having events, they use an app called Engage on campus. So making sure our profile is up to date, and we're trying to get into being intentional about hosting events next year. I don't say this year because I started transition from Michigan to here in January, so it's kind of later in the year, but I brought actually, and it's not esports related, it's more of game related. I went to homecoming and brought my rock band stuff. Yes, it's my personal rock band stuff, but it's been sitting and collecting dust. So it gave them, put a face to a name, show that I, quote unquote, cool, I guess. I don't know. You're not cool if you say you're cool.
Totally.
So, doing that, recruiting wise, I use it. There's an app I use. I think most of us know it. Stay plugged in. It's been very helpful. There's positives and negatives, so I'm going to deviate from that. But getting involved with your collegiate or not collegiate, high school leagues is really important. So hosting events, we're working on hosting high school events and being a place, because this is a 5,700 square foot building with 60 PCs. So I can host 9 Rocket League matches at one time. So that's in marketing, so we can extend our reach and show that.
Well, the number 2 question or number 1 question that we often get is, now let's get to the good stuff. If our students hold on, it's because they're holding on for this question, and it's, what kind of scholarships, compensation are available at your institutions, or institutions that you know of? And then another question that a lot of our really competitive esports students give us is, if prize money is involved, who gets it? Because I want it. That's what they say. So can you guys talk about that? And I'm sure it's different for all of you. So please.
Yeah, I'll start just because I probably don't have the best ones out of everyone here. So my former institution gave out larger scholarships. They weren't even partial, but it was very merit based. And then I was able to give out an average of 6,500 per student on top of merit. So it would end up being about half off on tuition, which is for a private institution, then equals about what a public school would cost without aid. Here, we're very new to recruiting for esports, even though the program has been around for 3 years. So I can only offer very small scholarships, but that's more of a proving base, like, hey, this is a thing you can recruit. So and students will come to places that have larger facilities and things like that. So I try to find students with a higher GPA. You hear me? Make sure your GPA is the best. It's okay to mess up. You can pivot and get better at it. I want to also point out that it is important to know the difference when you're looking at an institution, the difference between a club team and a varsity team. So though I can't necessarily offer large scholarships, we are fully endorsed by athletics. And we are a varsity program. There are programs that aren't there yet, and that doesn't lessen them. Just understanding where you kind of fall in the hierarchy of the university is probably more important too in this scenario, than just saying, hey, I'm going to accept this scholarship. Looking at how that university supports that program is really important. I also tell every recruit to ask the director that they're talking to, or coach, what are their goals for their program and where do they see it in the next 2 to 3 years? And they're like, really, I should ask that? I said, yeah. And if they can't answer that, then you shouldn't go to that school. So if anyone has gotten that question from a recruit, you're welcome. It came from me teaching students how to be recruited. So
I'll just share briefly. Technically, I haven't awarded any scholarships yet since I just started, and our varsity begins this fall. But it's pretty flexible. It was essentially the same at Wichita. Basically, right, the student is getting some amount of merit aid or grants, federal or state, whatever that looks like, from the school usually, and then the institution is able to come in and have a conversation with the student to see how they can best, address any remaining gap. So that's the same here at Syracuse, and it was the same at Wichita. Additionally to scholarship, just general forms of compensation. One thing that we already have built out going in the fall is just student employment. Lots of different approaches to that. But yeah, student employment, just generally something we're looking at creating positions across multiple areas. We have fortunate to have another full-time staff who does production. And so he'll have probably 10 students under him. I'll probably have another 10 or so student employee positions under me. And then also graduate students. They're technically not grad assistants for us, but more like graduate student employees of some sort. So a combination of student athletes who are on some form of scholarship, as well as the staff side who will be more student employees.
Awesome.
Raequan,
so,
do you want to talk a little bit about what you're getting?
I just got a job. So in terms of like student employee, that's something that we did have at Wichita State. And while I was doing the graphic design work, something that Travis and Joe had actually helped me do was I started getting paid for the work that I was doing while I was there. In terms of prize money, usually goes back to the program, but every time that we've had to like drive ourselves, usually the program will take us, but for times we've had to drive ourselves, they always pay for our food. They always, regardless if they drive us out, food is always paid for. And if we do drive, gas is always compensated back in terms of money. So everything usually gets taken care of for any tournaments that we travel to. But yeah, usually for terms of winning for prize for tournaments, anything that involves like leagues or like local tournaments usually go back to the school. And then things that aren't entirely entitled to like or tied in with like collegiate, we usually get to keep.
Good to know.
And not to put words in Daphne, Raequan, sorry, the gamer tag in his mouth. But just to build off on that, a lot of the leagues that we compete in, NASTAR League, for example, and whatnot, various other conferences, usually if it's an online league, they'll actually have a language, right, that stipulates, that prize money, whatever they win, has to go back to the school and then awarded, by the school's financial aid office, for example, into the individual student accounts. And then similarly, if it's an in-person LAN, like an Overwatch training, whatever, sometimes those organizers will let you win cash. And obviously then, the student can take it directly. So sometimes it's up to the institution, right? There are schools, some programs out there that do try to recoup a certain amount of that fee if they are sponsoring that travel. And some schools are very hands-off, but there's also still those various rulings or processes that are in place by the different leagues.
Smash is notorious for that. Cash.
Smash
It's all our nightmare dealing with Smash. Financially, I like Smash though. Just saying.
Yeah.
So
you want to get that
in competing with these tournaments that you go to, and some of it's highly organized, and the money's sent to the university, or it's cash and it's just handed to you in a bag, I assume, at the end. What's your experience or your thoughts on students being able to participate in a game or tournament outside of the team? Like, let's say there's a weekend tournament, it's not associated with your league, but they're super good at this game and they go do that. Because I know with my knowledge base is high school athletics, and so that's definitely no. You cannot go compete. You can't. Your club team can't compete with the school team sometimes, and that's a big no-no. What are your thoughts on that with a student doing something like that?
I can. Oh, go ahead. No, you go. You go. It's your turn.
This usually comes up with our Fortnite roster, and our stipulation has been, we're not going to prevent you from playing on anything on the weekend. But number one, it can't interfere with school. It can't interfere with your scheduled practices, and it can't interfere with college matches. Additionally, if you're going to be playing in a tournament as, by yourself, Fortnite, by yourself or with somebody else or in a what have you, you can't fly under our banner for that. So you can't wear the jersey, you can't use the logo, you can't have your tag and your name just for liability purposes. And we haven't had any issues with that. I've had Fortnite athletes who have played in Cash Cups and in DreamHack tournaments under just their name, and it's been totally fine. They show up on Monday ready for practice, and we're all there to congratulate them. So it's usually just comes down to a liability thing, but we at the end of the day, we don't want to prevent them from competition outside of what is already planned for them, as long as they follow a couple guidelines that we lay out for them.
Yeah.
I have a similar answer. But one of the things I did, like Smash tends to have weekend tournaments all the time. And sometimes to our detriment in esports, I'm very type A. So this scheduling makes me crazy that I don't know a whole schedule. Like athletics, traditional athletics, your schedule like 3 years, 4 years out. In esports, it's really hard because I am under the umbrella of athletics explaining that. So sometimes I try to look for like Smash, my former institution, I let them go to a major. Riptide was close to us. And then I knew that majors, you're not really, unless you're really high skill, they're probably not going to do the greatest. It's more about the experience. So that's why I kind of say, hey, you can go to one because they're also expensive. And then we sit down and look at what potential competitions there are. I did have an Overwatch group. My whole team came to me and sat down and was like, hey, coach, can we compete in this? This is the tournament. These are the guidelines. I looked at the others, if there were other schools. If there aren't any other schools, then I also I'll be like, hey, you can join, but it's not me. And also, if you're playing under your account, remember that even though you're not under us, you are still representing our school. You are still a representative of it because your name is on the website. And if they type in your gamer tag, they will find our school and they will find our program. And I better not hear about it because I don't make me have to do stuff. I'm really nice to you forced me to do something. So
I guess as a player, that does come up a lot, is not using your schools as the team name for you, whatever team you're playing for, not using your school. This is really common in Overwatch, where a lot of the collegiate scene, especially a lot of the top end of the collegiate scene, plays in OWCS and other leagues. For a while, Maryville didn't use the name Maryville when they competed in contenders. They used the name Saints, and this is very common for at least for Overwatch, where you have people from different teams or from different colleges playing on the same team outside of the collegiate space. And so it's about just but you said at the end of the day you still represent your school, so you have to keep that in mind.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to have us backpedal just a little bit because the hours go so quickly here. And I want to make sure I get to this question because I know this is going to go to a lot of our gaming concepts schools, and there will be a lot of young women, young high school women. And so I want to talk a little bit about how you guys promote inclusivity. I couldn't say it for a minute, and support gender diversity within your programs, especially encouraging female participation and underrepresented populations in general. Oh, who wants to take that one?
Go ahead. Nope. I'm gonna keep.
We'll start with you.
So, for us, not just me, It starts from the top, right? Be intentional about the mission, embrace uncomfortable conversations, and not just have the conversations, but like actually put actions out there. But what does that mean? Acknowledge that uh, there have been less opportunities for women. And there's not a whole lot we can do about that in this moment, after time has passed. But what we can do is start building more opportunities for women, more opportunities for people who didn't have opportunities to compete previously or in high school or in middle school. We can highlight their accomplishments, put a spotlight on them. And one of the things that's been really effective for us in terms of recruiting more women to our program is highlighting the women in our program outside of who they are in esports, right? We have honors students, we have students who publish research papers, we have students who are former athletes on basketball teams, on tennis teams. So being intentional about the representation, embracing what's uncomfortable, and don't just talk about it, be about it, has helped tremendously to encourage more people to not only join our program, but stay in our program. Because once we embrace those uncomfortable conversations, we start becoming more comfortable with each other so that we can have those tough conversations, which is really ironic because we're like a private Catholic school. And sometimes people are like, kind of pearl clutching. And so having an environment where students feel safe to talk about some, again, really uncomfortable things that need to be addressed is honestly key. Because when you build that safe environment, more people will come. But you still have to maintain that safe environment. So lots of learning opportunities, lots of intentionality, and lots of shining a spotlight on the people that illuminate the program.
I think, I can touch on this. We all build a community. We could guess that's what I would say. First of all, I want to applaud you guys because this is quite a diverse panel. And so I don't know if you intended, but good job.
It just I had no idea, honestly, that there were so few. I mean, I had a rough idea that there were so few female coaches, but I didn't realize I think there's less than like 15. Is that correct? Would I be correct? And I thought, and I have 2? Wow.
Well, and people of color, and
yes.
probably different walks of life too, different types of schools. That's another diversity on top of that, things you wouldn't necessarily think of. I think that we, to Kaitlin's point, we all kind of, most of us kind of gravitate together for women's sake, I should say. Not everyone that's diverse is going to be friends. That's not how that works. But we gravitate together, kind of uplifting people. One of the things that some of the women of esports and coffee, our head baristas there, we've been on a lot of panels. I've done quite a few. I've done one with almost everyone except Raequan, but we've been on panels together before, and giving your students the opportunities to speak on those panels, if it's same as the panel. I'm not saying I would pass this panel, but there's other panels that I've been on that I'm like, well, I have been on this, these are the same questions, how about we get a different perspective? Because yes, while Kaitlin and I are agreeing on things, we still don't have the same exact perspective, and our students after us don't have the same perspective. So kind of opening the door for the students behind you is important. And another thing, kind of set the tone with programs, is like esports is the one of the few things that has no level up on gender or diversity. Now, if you're from an affluent area, then maybe you'll have better PCs and equipment, but gender does not. And skill, yes, skill is a skill issue, but muscle or whatever, it doesn't, you're not better because you're a guy, you're not better because you're a woman. It's an equal playing field. It's just understanding that you got to change the norm and the narrative that video games are for boys, just like Legos are for boys. I like playing Legos.
Yeah.
No.
I'll just chime in real quick. I think Kaitlin put it really well with just being intentional and like actually taking action. I'll just again reference an example. At Wichita, we were very fortunate. At one point, we had 2 women in program, awesome leaders. Avery, who's actually still there now, as the interim program manager, and TJ, who's one of our master's students who graduated. I think she works for the KC Pioneers now as a contractor. Yes. So, when we would go out in the community, if we were going to talk to a middle school, going out to talk with a high school, bring those leaders with you, right? Don't just go with yourself and the same people. Change the students up, bring students of different backgrounds, whatever that looks like. And, from a student or from a spectator perspective, right, as a high school, or a middle school girl, for example, right, they're looking and then seeing who's talking to them and they're like, wow, that's someone I can relate to. The things that they're sharing experience with actually makes sense to me instead of me sharing my experiences. It's different. And then they can have those conversations and it's a lot more meaningful. Right, it's different depending on who you have available to you, but that's just an example. So we were fortunate in that regard. But that was one thing that we tried and it worked. So if you can, do it.
All right. Well,
Raequan, can you
oh,
speak to this a little bit also? Sorry, Alex, just because I mean, I didn't necessarily include it in the question, but Danielle, as you bring it up, being an African American person, we don't often see those people either, but I know you because of Travis. I've seen you out on the trail before, so I thought of you.
One of the things that's kind of like, I guess that's what makes, specifically our Overwatch team so different is that there's me, Desmond, Dietrich, all three of us being African Americans, all on the same Overwatch team, and all of us being really good at the game. With Dietrich being like a top player in Overwatch just in general, like overall. And it's something you don't see a lot of, but it's something that I guess like we were kind of lucky and fortunate the opportunities that we had. And I wish we could help more people, not just people of color, but people of like even just different genders and such, giving them more opportunities. Luckily, like we said, I had an esports at my high school, and so did they. They ended up getting picked up after like people going to watch, like seeing them play because they were also doing really well in HSCL at the time. And so it's I don't know. It's a kind of an odd experience because you almost still feel a little isolated, but at the same time, it gives me a position to help other people make it to the same place that I got to. And so yeah, it's just being, I don't have a good way of putting it other than just like that's the nice thing about esports is that it doesn't really matter who you are. You still something you can do in esports. You don't have to be a good player. You can still there's other jobs to do in esports outside of just playing, and anyone can do these jobs. And that's the beauty of esports. Yeah.
Very good. Very well said. Well said. So wrapping up, I know we're over time, and I want to be respectful of everybody watching and people that are here in the audience, and especially you guys. Wrapping up, what advice do you have for aspiring collegiate esports athletes who wanna jump into this next level? Start with Travis.
Advice. That's a big question. If you have something you want to do or you're passionate about, just do it. That's anecdotal, but that's how I got into the space. Obviously, that's maybe a dated example because esports obviously has changed and collegiate kind of changed, but I think that still is the case to an extent where if you want to do a podcast, if you're passionate about coaching, if you want to do data analytics or be a commentator, there are still channels to where you can develop those skills on your own. Granted, sometimes there is a barrier in terms of resources needed. You might need a PC, something high end. Hopefully, that's something you can get access to through maybe a school program or something like that, and with the support of a program. But if there's something you're passionate about, no one's going to stop you, right? And in fact, I think in the space right now, that is very positively viewed. Even if you're not. Everyone's got to start somewhere, so don't go and think you got to be the best. But when I see a student and they're like, I want to be a commentator, maybe they are not very good, but they're like, I'm super passionate about it and I'm willing to put in the time and I'm passionate. I'll do whatever I can to match that energy and try to get them the support that they need.
Yeah, I can echo it. I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. Don't be afraid to pursue your passion. I always had a family member say that if you find something you love to do, it should shine through you like a light beaming that people have to look when they look at you, they have to wear sunglasses. And I was like, I don't understand what you're saying. Sure. I worked in healthcare prior to this, and that was the safe bet, right? That was healthcare is forever. There's going to be sick people. It's just safe. And I did a career shift, and people thought I was crazy. My degree is in health science, so it doesn't really even matter what your degree is in. Obviously, if you want to be a doctor, you need to go to med school and things like that. And engineer, you have to go to school for engineering. But whatever you pursue, don't be afraid to take the leap, and just reach out to us. There are plenty of volunteer positions we have that you can do. And one of the things we talked about in Esports and Coffee last week was communicate with us and tell us what you're passionate about. So if you are good at marketing, tell me and I will find a marketing position for you. If you are good at event management, tell me and I will help you get into event management. Sometimes I don't even know the places that I have help or that I could place people. It doesn't all have to be competitive.
All right.
Stopped abruptly.
Oh, it's all good. I guess for people, anyone under the collegiate level, especially like late high school, having social media and connecting with like your nearest esport, like your college, like in nearby colleges, getting like interacting with your community is a very good way of getting started. And also, if let's say, I guess like for my instance, you want to do graphic design, but you also still want to do something involving like esports. If your college doesn't have a graphic designer, you can be that graphic designer. If a position doesn't exist, just make it exist. Like, because a lot of times it's not that a college doesn't want to do it; they just don't have anyone to do it. And if you're willing to put in the work and do it, they'll probably let you do it. And for everyone that's in college currently and wants to do something in relating to esports, yet again, go talk to the directors of esports, see if there's anything that you can provide to them, and also be able to help out with the program in any sort of way. That's a really like finding any way to help is a really good way of getting started. Yeah.
And for me, just keep your grades up, do your best. And when it comes to esports, if you get told no to, joining a team, that probably just means no for that season. Doesn't mean no forever. Keep working at it. Coaches like to see improvement, a positive trajectory. And yeah, if a job doesn't exist yet, take that as inspiration to be the person that helps make that exist. Like everyone said, just stick with it. Stick with it.
All right. Well, wonderful. I think that is going to wrap us up for today. Thank you so much, everybody, for being on here. This has been a great discussion. Hopefully, all of the students, coaches, teachers, athletes that are going to be watching this can really get something out of this. I know that I learned a lot more about how all the systems work and how your roles have really affected the collegiate esports scene. And I really appreciate Christy, I should say, not us. I should really appreciate Christy for getting both coaches, directors, and a player on here. So to get the full gamut of what we're trying to achieve with educating people on what's next after high school, because high school is kind of where everybody is seeing it, and then they see the pro scene, and then the collegiate scene in the middle is where you guys flourish and are the experts in that. And that's what a lot of parents that are dealing with us are wanting to know what that next step is, because obviously you're not going from high school to pro. You cannot normally do that. I don't think. I don't
Or they
know if
do.
anyone's ever done that in esports, but maybe. Who knows?
That's a different panel.
It's
It
kind
That's a
of
different panel. Esport pros, high school to pro. Yeah. So again, thank you so much, everybody, for being on here. I'm going to include here in the chat here. This is going to be on our YouTube by the end of the week. So please go ahead, like and subscribe to that. And any other webinars coming up will be posted out on our socials. Again, thank you to our panel and our audience for all the great questions. I know we didn't get to all of them, but feel free to reach out to any of these guys as I speak for you on LinkedIn or any of their socials to ask them questions or get help. So again, thanks everybody and have a great evening.